Guys, welcome back to the Physique Factory Podcast, and today we're going to run through injuries, how to prevent them and rehab them and all that sort of stuff. So where do you fancy jumping into this?
I actually thought we were talking about conspiracy theories today. I thought we were talking about Antarctica and whether or not it was real.
Well, we was doing leading up to this call, weren't we? And what's a giant guy? What was that?
Oh yeah, the guy that what's his name? Andrew Dawson or something. The guy that spotted the giant on top of the hill in Canada and now is mysteriously dead. Look it up on TikTok. That all the secrets of the world have actually been solved since TikTok came around.
That's brilliant. Definitely download. In fact, no, I deleted TikTok. It's absolutely vile. I fucking hate them. I got banned. Literally, I started using it and I got banned because there's too many little fucking shitty cunts on there.
You were getting a lot of abuse, weren't you?
Yeah, so have you posted anything like about exercise and give it a good reason, potentially why not to do that for a certain scenario or whatever? People don't like it. People get so emotionally attached to exercises, but that's not what this podcast is about.
No, but anyway, it's what we like talking about. But like that was overhead press, wasn't it, that you put on that? I think that's the one that got a lot of people triggered. Like you said, the overhead press, like barbell press, was not like the most optimal in terms of shoulder press.
Overhead press and that fucking kneeling pull down thing. Why would you do that? It's evident. So you can literally, as soon as you go over your body weight, he's going to start pulling you up. You're not restrained, and you can't really get as much out of it. Probably mentioned it a shitload of times on this podcast. But as for the military press standing overhead, it's sort of a similar thing. You can't load it as much as you would do like seated, because when you're pressing anything seated, you're a lot more stable, and with an increase in stability, results in an increase in like force production. So that's the argument. It's not an argument. It's facts right there.
That's the thing, though. I don't think he actually listened to you because he was just like, "You're bashing overhead barbell press." It's like, well, no, I'm just saying to do it seated.
No, fucking bash in.
That's the attitude we want to avoid, James.
That's pretty much what I reacted to. Anyway, I was like that. So apparently, you can't be that abusive on it. So saying that you're going to murder someone, but you get banned.
It's good, that, to be fair, because I mean, we're trying to look like a professional business here, so I'm glad you got banned from that. Actually, you know that. Hopefully, it'll teach you a lesson.
Oh yeah. Well, have you listened to half of our podcasts? They're not professional. Well, they are in somewhat, but you know.
Yeah, we're casual about it. I call it casual.
Yeah, that's it. That's what I was doing. I give them a casual response on TikTok.
Casual response. I'll knock your fucking teeth out, mate.
As long as there's no like things like there's no racism or something, religion, politics, then that's fine. Don't include any of those in business, and then
we'll say no more about the picture of Nick that you made.
That was a bit too bad. He didn't like that one bit, did he?
No, like, you can't blame the guy either. I wouldn't like it very much either.
Yeah.
I'll take it in good spirits. So, anyway, injuries, James. You're the man for injuries because you've had them all.
Yeah. Well, mainly my knees. Everything else has been pretty fine, but.
Yeah. Well, I'm the opposite. Like, I've had upper back, lower back, shoulder, and now I'm getting a knee one. That's always good. Like, I've got a knee niggle anyway right now, and I'm aiming to keep it as a niggle. So, do you want to just start by like literally going into how I'm trying to keep that as a niggle?
Yeah, we can do. I mean, or we could look at what the possible reasons why it's turned into a niggle.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, basically, the reason I think it's turned into a niggle, and you're not going to like this, I think the Vivos are playing a role. You know, the flat shoes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think my foot stability on my left foot is pretty poor in terms of like maintaining my arch. And you probably noticed if you've done like a heavy set on a hack squat or maybe a barbell squat or something like that, when you start to fatigue, you can sometimes notice your knees will start to come in. It happens to quite a lot of people actually, and a lot of that time it can be down to the muscles that maintain the arch in your foot that begin to fail, and then when that fails, you've got your ankle then starts to collapse inwards, and then your knee starts to come inwards. So yeah, that can happen quite a lot. I see it quite a lot in clients actually. That can be a dorsiflexion thing too.
I was going to say that because remember when we trained together? Have you got an issue with dorsiflexion?
No, not really.
Nothing like that. But to be fair, it was the last like 2-3 reps. Remember when we was doing the pendulum?
It's always the later end of the set, which is why I think it's actually going to be like a foot stability thing more than an actual like ankle mobility thing. But
Yeah.
I suppose like what are you looking at there though? Like we've got the knee where the issue potentially is. We're kind of starting from the bottom up, aren't we? We're starting from the foundation,
I
which is the
think
foot.
when you look at things like that, the knee, you've always got to look at the joints around that. So you look at like the hip and the ankle, hip, ankle, and foot, and then just see what's going on with those, because half of the time it might not be caused by anything. Well, it is going on at the knee, but something might be causing it at the hip or the ankle. So we need to think what compensation is occurring to cause that issue at your knee.
I think something worth saying as well, like just when we've been on the note of the foot sort of thing, I don't think a flat arch or your arch like collapsing is an issue. It's the knock-on effect of it. It's like the knees coming inwards. It's actually the issue, if that makes sense, because it is a part of normal foot motion.
That's it. I mean, like, what is it? It's eversion, isn't it? So it everts.
Yeah.
So or pronation.
I just wanted you to say it, I couldn't remember it there. I was like, I'll let him say it.
Yeah. So it's pronation. The eversion, pronation, the same thing. Literally, when the arch collapses, so your foot's rolling it in, and then your knees are likely to start following that. And it causes a valgus, and then there's some like iffy forces across the knee. So that could potentially cause an issue.
There's a common name for valgus, isn't there? Is it knock knees? They call
knock knees, yeah. Someone had a client on a consultation was like, "Oh, I've got knock knees." I was like, the one where it goes inwards, and was like, "Oh yeah, that's it."
Yeah, structurally, this is like we're kind of getting on to the whole valgus thing here, but structurally that can come from the hip as well. Particularly, I want to say particularly in women.
You're right.
Or I've seen this more in women anyway. So you've got your thigh bone, the femur, and if the neck of that is long and at a certain angle, it's going to push everything outwards, if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm explaining this very well, but then that can just make you sit a bit more naturally in that kind of like valgus or knock knees or whatever you want to call it. So yeah, that it can come obviously from the hip down as well.
That's right. I mean,
which again gets
that Q angle that is, isn't it? And then I think when I was at uni, I was doing like loads of like biomechanics shit on change of direction and jumping, all that sort of stuff, and was looking at like ACL injuries, and there was more. The prevalent more in females in like drop jumps and anything like that, or where they've got to land, just because
I've heard skiing as well.
Yeah, it's just because the actual the Q angle.
Yeah, and then therefore the valgus as well. Yeah. So it's not these things. It's not the foot arch that's the problem. It's not the Q angle that's the problem as such. It's a knock-on effect onto the knees, and then I suppose the actual valgus itself or knock knees, the issue with that is it causes a lot of compression at the other side of the knee. If you can imagine how that looks, if you know what the bones look like, if you can imagine how that looks on the lateral aspect of the knee, we're getting a lot of compressive force there between the condyles there, or from the condyle onto the tibial plateau, should I say. I'll try and keep this in more simplistic terms. From the bottom of the femur onto the top of the lower leg bone, essentially, you're getting a lot more compressive force there than you would usually experience. And then add on like whatever load you're using there, whether it's a lot of load in a hack squat, whether it's a lot of load in a pendulum squat, whatever it is, that's just a recipe for niggles. So, I mean, essentially, with my niggle,
that's where you can I think sort of like cause bone spurs, osteophytes, things like that. When it's bone and bone, and there's a lot of forces going on against each other there, and the articulating surface, then that's where that can happen. And then you might find, I've got a fucking lump in my knee, this, that, and the other, and then that's literally just a bone spur off all the wear and tear.
Yeah, I think when I explain this to clients, I just say it's like when you go into like a cave or something and there's been a drip for hundreds of millions of years that starts creating stone essentially. Kind of the same thing. Force creates that kind of reaction. So, that can definitely happen in the human body too. But it's not going to happen the first time you do it. If you do it once, you'll be all right. But it's like that repetitive thing. If it keeps happening time and time again under more and more load, that's when you're going to potentially start to see issues. But I suppose with injuries as well, like some people are unfortunate, and the first time they do something like that, they might actually get a pain and get an injury, or you could do it the rest of your life and just get away with it. Some people just get away with it as well.
That's it. I mean, it's like when you're walking as well. If you're walking with a load of knee valgus, and potentially that can cause an issue, because I have people who just sign up with me. They've not done anything in the gym or anything like running or any sport. As soon as I've got really bad knee pain, and then I look at the wear on the trainers, and it's always on the inside of the foot where they've been walking. So do you know, when it's literally been like pronating inwards. So I was like, that's why. So we start looking at the gait cycle, how they're walking, and try and do something with that.
It's an interesting thought, that, actually. Something I actually don't really think about that often is like looking at the shoe. I mean, I've heard that before. I've definitely looked at that before, but it's kind of one of those things that goes in your head and then you forget about it again. So it's definitely something worth looking at. But that's the idea with the Vivos as well, is to make you more aware of that. Like they've got like not much of a sole, and then you're a bit more aware of, like, I'm quite aware. I kind of walk on my heels quite a lot. I don't like my big toe doesn't make much contact with the ground, so I'm then consciously making more of an effort with that. And like, don't get me wrong, over time that might be getting better, but the reason I was kind of not bashing them, but I was a little bit, in terms of my leg training, I think that lack of support is adding to the breakdown of that arch, which is then adding to the valgus that I'm experiencing later in a set. So to be honest, we'll move into what I've been doing to try and mitigate that. But yeah, like, that's just one example of a niggle or injury. And the thing is, sometimes you don't notice these things until it's too late. And I'm starting to get that niggle now. I'm like, fuck, this is it. But it is a niggle, and we'll keep it a niggle for now, and we'll try and not let it turn into an actual injury. But I suppose if you're training fairly hard consistently, there's going to be wear and tear, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. If you're training hard, but stupidly, there's definitely going to be wear and tear. And by that, I mean your starts and stops in a movement. So if you're going a bit of a pace and bouncing out the bottom of a squat, then you fucking bet your ass that you're going to get some knee issues.
Eventually, anyway. But again, like I said, like, some people will get away with this shit for so long. It's like smoking. You could smoke, 20, 40 fags a day for the rest of your life, and you might be all right. But I might do it for the next 5 years, and I might end up dying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like some people get away with it, others don't.
That's it. And you don't want to have that risk, do you? There's no need to give yourself that risk.
I wouldn't take the risk.
So if you
I'm not going to start smoking the fags anyway.
That's it. I mean, if you want to train for a long time, if you want to get around with no pain, just make sure that you're controlling the movements, because the faster we're going into the bottom of a squat, the more force we're going to have to come up with our joints to get out of it. So we're actually dealing with more than what's on the bar. So you need to pay attention to how fast you're actually moving when you're performing an exercise, with everything, not just a squat.
In terms of resistance profile as well, obviously a squat's a lot harder at the bottom than it is at the top, but you're multiplying that when you come down with speed. You're totally multiplying that. But something that's interesting, seeing the Body Academy, the hammer strength leg press is against the wall, right? But people obviously pile a lot of weight on that, and then they do exactly what you're saying, like kind of dive bomb it down to the bottom, and then they must re-rack it like really hard as well, because the leg press starts to come away from the
middle
wall
of the room
to the point where you can walk around the leg press, and this leg press is holding like 400 odd kilos of weight on it as well. It's got all the plates on it too, and you're like, fuck me, like, you must be battering that down. And it must be happening time and time again if it's moving away from the wall like that. But don't get me wrong, when you've got a client in and you're loading it up, it's actually quite handy when you can walk behind it. But anyway.
Well, yeah. So that's literally the starts and the stops. And then exceeding your range as well. That could be a potential reason. If you say it's more when it comes down to the hips. I mean, if you test someone's knee flexion and see how much you can bend the knee, because I always go to the hip and the ankle first, just to make sure. With a knee, they can tend to get quite a lot. But for some potential,
I've never really seen any limitations in the knee. You know that? I've never really seen many limitations in the knee.
I've had a couple of clients, but I've always checked it, because from what they gave me in the consultation form, I mean, if someone's got like a ligament or an ACL issue, a meniscus issue, anything like that, then one of my clients can't get to like full flexion with the pretty much, the calf against the hamstring or whatever you want to call that. So that was an issue, and then she couldn't really get to full extension either on the right leg, but on the left leg it's totally fine. She got like a lot of flexion and a lot of extension, but that just comes down to having the ACL repair done. And she took that was, I think they took a hamstring as well from that leg and put it into a knee.
Yeah, I've got the exact same situation with my client. Just exactly what you said there. Same on one leg, it's fine. On the other leg, it's not. And the exact same thing. It came from the hamstring on the same leg. So like, it always seems a bit counterintuitive to me that. But I mean, obviously, I'm not a surgeon, and they are going to know better than me. But at the same time, it's like you're taking away from the hamstring to aid the ACL, but the hamstring's obviously backing up that ACL. So you've then injured the thing that backs up
Yeah, exactly.
that ligament there. So it seems a bit backwards. They
Yeah,
can
it is
take
a
it
bit
from
like
other
that, isn't it,
places.
when you think about it. That's a good one to think about.
It is. Yeah, because they can take it from other places. Because there's a guy comes into Body Academy, Yanis. He had his done, and they took it from his tibialis,
Right.
so you can take it from there.
Well, that's interesting.
So I mean, yeah. Well, I can't remember exactly what he said to me, but he's squatted a lot of weight. He's like he does like powerlifting, and he squatted something like 360 or something like that. And he's obviously wanting to get back to that, and they advised him that was a better way to get back to it. It's a longer recovery, but that's a better way to get a stronger recovery essentially. I might be mincing a little bit what he said to me, but it was something along those
All right,
lines.
cool. Interesting.
Yeah, but different surgeons are going to have different like preferences, and sometimes the surgeon as well might be saying, it's easier for me to go into this hamstring than it is to go into that tibialis.
Yeah, it's making their life easier. What else? What do you reckon with injuries?
Well, going back to like what I was saying about my like little niggle at the minute, let's talk about like what measures I'm actually taking to try and offset that. So first of all, trying to get a bit more range in dorsiflexion just in case. I don't think that is the problem, but I'm doing my calf exercise first so that I'm like kind of almost forcing myself into a passive range. And you know yourself, you get a bit more range when you do that, a bit more active kind of range there. So I've been trying to do that. You could potentially do it the other way where you actually contract like your tibialis. You could do that, but I'm just kind of doing it by letting myself get forced into dorsiflexion. Another thing I've done is I've started banding the hack squat again, just obviously for the sake of it taking some of the load at the bottom and then obviously reducing the overall force in the knees at the bottom. And obviously just making sure I'm not dive bombing anything. I wouldn't do that anyway. And then putting the hack squat later in the program too. So when I done legs yesterday, I actually started with a leg extension. I was like, "Fuck me, I'm getting old now." Starting my leg extension, and then I moved on to I done the hammer strength leg press. So not like the way that I do it, I don't get a massive like kind of moment after the knee. So it's not a massive kind of quad exercise.
That's what I do similar.
Then,
was like with my knees, I always do leg press first before something like hack squat or a pendulum where there's a lot of knee flexion.
Yeah, and then that was it onto the hack squat after that, which are then banded. And that's obviously limited. Well, the band isn't limiting the load I can use, but like doing the leg press and the leg extension first, it's going to limit the load that I need to use on the hack squat to get to the same level of like kind of fatigue. So that's the thinking there. So that's kind of what I've been doing to mitigate that, as well as obviously just simply focusing a bit more weight on the outside of my feet. That's going to make a big difference there.
That's it. I was going to say that's probably one of the biggest ones. So if I've got a client who's got a lot of knee valgus and there's no issue really at the hip or the knee or the ankle, then I just look at where they're actually applying the weight on the feet. So if their weight is on the medial arch, then chances are it's going to start collapsing inwards and we're going to get that valgus. But we start saying, I always say around about 70% of the pressure, apply that towards the outside. I'm not saying make sure like your foot goes up like that on its side, just gradually onto the outside of the foot.
That becomes another problem.
And then that's just going to stop those knees coming inwards or hopefully help with that.
Yeah, it becomes a bit of a challenge though to keep in that position, I must admit. But then anyway, that's a good way of kind of mitigating the risk there too. Is there anything else that I've not mentioned that you would think?
I mean, I'm just thinking what I do with clients. So if a client had, and we're talking about a knee pain, I've got a client for it. So John's got a knee pain. We're still yet to figure out what it is. I think it is a tendinopathy, or I don't think it's a meniscus issue, but it's with load at a certain range. So it's like in the mid-range. It's not at full extension of the knee. It's not like at full flexion. It's in that mid-range where it is. And I'm thinking it's a tendinopathy with patella tendon. So what I do is...
Here's the thing with meniscus, just while you mentioned that. I suppose if it was something meniscus wise, you'd probably notice that if so. I've got a client that did have a meniscal tear, and I remember her saying to me, if she wears flat shoes with not much sole, she feels it a hell of a lot more because of that kind of impact, and the meniscus is going to help kind of absorb some of that impact, isn't it? So
Yeah.
like if it's something like that, that might be a sign. That's something to think about. But with all this stuff, it's really hard to pinpoint like, oh, that's exactly what it is. Here's what we'll do. It's like, it's more of a educated guess. And what I always say to clients is like, whenever you go to physios or whenever you go to a doctor or something to see people about that kind of stuff, if they tell you something, it's like, well, ask them how they came to that conclusion. Don't like let someone just say this is what it is, just randomly.
That's it.
It's
Physios.
performance.
What are physios? Physio terrorists, more like, and I love that name for them. Just because they end up coming away with all these exercises. They get a big like thing off the internet. They print it off the sheets or whatever. They download it off the software, and they give the same thing to everyone. What is it? Oh, you've got Oscar Slatters. Right, here is this, the same. You've got something like a banded extension on the chair. You've got clamshells. You've got back pain. Right, cool. Banded extension on the chair. Clamshells. It's all the fucking same. All the same. What's that?
Is this NHS physios you're on about, or like private ones?
Oh, just in general. I mean, not all of them, but most of them.
Yeah, I noticed the NHS stuff. Like, I've had a couple of sheets from clients that have been like NHS physios have given them like these exercises, and like you say, exactly the same.
Yeah,
exactly
one
the
of
same.
them.
I've also had
I had the dumbbell rotation thing where there. I was like, that's not doing much rotate or like
You're fighting a losing battle.
Yeah, it's not really doing much infraspinatus at all. And I was like, oh right. I was like, what? Why? I was like, well, the weight's going down, so your biceps getting a really strong isometric to it, but you're just going through a motion there. I was like, oh right, but I'm moving through that. I was like, yeah, it's not going to work.
I've had physios in the past as well. Like, you've had clients that have actually had serious injuries and that, where I've emailed the physio to say, right, I'm the PT that's working with this guy. Can you just give me an update on where they are? And they fucking ignore me. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
we're trying to help this guy out, and you get nothing.
Yeah, they're shocking. And then I had a physio say to one of my clients, "Don't do leg extensions." I was like, "All right, why?" It was like, "Is it told you why?" Went, oh yeah, he said there's no core contraction. I was like, what? Your hamstrings are gonna literally. That's the opposing thing. You got to look at the say if someone's really limited in the leg extension at the top, what might be causing that? Like the passive reason from the hamstring potentially. So it's definitely contracted the tension there. There's definitely tension there to steer the knee.
Especially if you've got like a leg extension where you sit like up at 90 degree as well.
Yeah. So they're clueless, absolutely clueless. Don't go to a physio. That's the takeaway from the video.
There's got to be good ones out there, to be fair. But
there's a really good guy there's a guy who I know. He's an osteopath. It's called Chris Knott. He's like really good.
Oh yeah, I've heard of him actually. Yeah, he seems like he knows his shit. But yeah, I suppose at the end of the day, with injuries and that, when you go to get like unless it's like something that you can either see in an X-ray or there's a way of testing it, you're only getting someone's best guess.
Yeah, literally. It's just, you know what you do? Like if a client comes to you like of an issue, there's like a list of potential reasons, and then what can we do about it, and then just make sure you're not going to make it worse or cause any other issues.
Yeah. Our job is to respect it more than fix it. Fixing it is certainly not our job.
It. And if it does fix, then we can do some shit, see what happens. That's not going to cause an issue. And then if it does get better, fucking hell, there we go. Brilliant.
It's something like, it interests me. If someone comes in and they're like, oh, my shoulder's sore today. Like, I'm like, oh, what's going on? Like, what's been happening? Let's see if we can dive into this a little bit. But you've got to watch, like, if you're PTing someone, or even if you're like someone's online coach, you've got to watch that it doesn't take over like that session. It's like that session then becomes like a rehab for them, because that's not really what they've hired you for. That's not the job.
Exactly.
I mean, don't get me wrong, some people will appreciate that, but like, you've got to not let it take over.
Yeah, I think it's just working around that issue, and then say if you was doing like a dumbbell shoulder press, you'd turn that into something like a 60-70 degree incline reverse banded Smith or something like that, so it's going to take off the load, or that's just an idea.
That's where our job is, isn't it? that's where our job is. It's making those adaptations that allows this person to continue to work towards the goal that they're trying to achieve.
That's it.
Not fix them.
Or you can say what's been the issue, what's caused it. Or I had someone last night where they slipped on the ice because it's been snowing again down here, and he really hurt his calf. We couldn't do leg press or the hack squat that he wanted to, what was on the plan to do. So we just had to work around it. We could only do like leg extension and leg curls, and he couldn't squat.
Just had to give up. Just had to ditch the session. Couldn't do the hack squats. Like, fuck this, not worth it.
It's literally couldn't do it though. So I was like, and he fell over, and it was through that. It wasn't just randomly. So I thought, you know what, we just don't do it today.
Yeah, I think a big thing with injuries as well is like once you've had an injury, no matter how serious, like say for instance, a lot of people get like, I don't know, like sciatic nerve pain or something like that, lower back pain, sciatic nerve pain, something like that, right? Once someone's had that, it's that fear association with those exercises that they feel is going to cause it. That can be a bigger issue than anything.
Mentally. I mean, like when I was doing that low back pain course, it's like the CBT thing. Like, most of the time they've recovered from it, but it's in the head, and it's like neurologically, they just think it's still going there. There's something there, it's still the awareness of avoiding that pain, or it's like a placebo, something. So that's why they can't get back to what they was doing.
I think as well, like, so let's say, for example, I don't know, let's say if you've had lower back pain and you're like, fuck, I don't want to do an RDL or, you know, something like that, avoiding that position and then avoiding working those muscles, they're going to get weak in that position. So that's actually just going to make things worse over time, isn't it?
That's it, definitely. So you do need to like contract it. There's stages, isn't there? Say, so if you've had like a disc injury or something like that around your spine, you start off with, just to get all those muscles firing again, like low level isometrics, then work up like the intensity of the isometrics, then you can start working on things like the concentrics, eccentrics together, and then working that range, the isotonic shit.
Just finding out where they're at and meeting them where they're at and then taking them from there, rather than just like, okay, straight back in doing like a heavy RDL or something.
That's where,
like, yeah, it definitely.
With this industry, that's where most people go wrong. There was like, oh, you've got an injury, have you? Just let me know. If it's really bad, then we'll just, we'll do something else. But yeah, let's do this. Let's keep doing this. And I was like, or like when someone comes to me, someone's had a really, really stressful day, and we've got RDLs on the cards and the heavy ones, like a 6 to 10 repper. And they've got the like doing like 200 kilograms or something like that. So there's a lot for them. I wouldn't go for that rep range, or I'd leave a few in the tank just because it's so demanding. And if you're stressed, there's more potential chance of causing an injury.
Yeah, you've just got to make that judgment call, though. And I think, like, with what you're saying, like, sometimes you can, some people say, oh, you know, if it's sore, let me know, we'll just do the usual stuff. Sometimes, to be fair, I think clients can be drama queens and, like say, for example, they're like, oh, my elbow's sore. But actually, you had them do overhead cable tricep extensions for the first time the other night, and maybe it's actually just a tricep that they're feeling a bit of burning. But like to them, they've never felt that before. So you've got to make the judgment call between, is this actually, you know, something that's potentially dangerous for them, or is it actually just they've got a little bit of muscle soreness? It's figuring that out. It's a hard call.
The low back one. So I did some back extensions with a client, and I only did one set because it was the first time doing them, and I thought, you know, we're going to get a little bit of DOM, so it's that tolerance thing, making sure we're not overdoing it, starting off at a reasonable level. So the next day, the message was thinking, oh, I think I pulled my back yesterday in the session. And I was like, well, did you feel it immediately when you did anything in the session yesterday? Went, oh, no. And I was like, well, I don't think you pulled your back. Went, oh, but it's hurting. I was like, well, what's it like? I was like, is there any sharp pains or anything? It's like, oh, there's not any sharp pains. And I was like, it's DOMs. Everyone, loads of people with a low back. I was like, I pulled it, I've done something to it. I was like, you've not, it's just DOMs around your rectors. You've not felt that before. When you've not pulled your back, you've got muscles there.
Yeah, I mean, you know about it if it's a bad pain. Like, DOMs are just like, it's just like pumped up feeling, isn't it? But like, to someone that's never experienced that before.
It's a weird feeling, isn't it? It's the pumped up sort of restricted feeling. It's a bit tender-ish, but if it is like a big problem, it's going to be something like a sharp shooting sort of pain in your spine, isn't it? If you've injured some disc or nerves around it.
What about clicking? I get that a lot from clients, like, oh, my elbow's clicking on this exercise or my knee's clicking on this exercise.
The majority of the time, it's fine if there's no pain.
Yeah, yeah. That's kind of what I go by as well. But it's something I've tried to explore a bit more, and I can't really seem to get the answers I'm looking
Yeah,
for on it. Like, I just seem to get a lot of different answers and no solid answers. Like people, I've heard from people, it's like tendons, like clicking over like joints, things like that, which seems far fetched, but like in terms of how it sounds, if you know what I mean. I don't imagine it would sound like that, but I mean it could
it's the
be.
air pockets and
Other people, it's
air
gases.
pockets and
Yeah,
joints.
the air pocket,
So I
things like
think
that.
I looked at it.
Yeah,
There's 5. I can't remember all the 5. We got 2 of them. Then there's 5 potential reasons why your joints might click, and one of them's the issue, which might cause like a problem. So there's the other 4 times it's not an issue to be worried about, but that the last one that there could be an issue, and I can't remember what it is off the top of my head why they might be pain.
yeah. Something I'd need to do a bit more research into as well. But like, yeah, clicking accompanied by pain, I'm like,
That's the
let's
problem.
stop
If
this
it's
right now.
clicking in pain, then you need to think there's something going on there.
Yeah, definitely. Like, listen to your client and make the best judgment call is what I would say there. But that's the stuff we've been looking into recently, the joint forces stuff. That's going to be very, very useful with this kind of stuff as well. But it's like last night, we were on that call yesterday at 2 o'clock, and then like I went and trained clients after that, and all I'm thinking in my head is joint forces, and I'm watching them do the exercise, and like it's one thing doing it in a snapshot online. But the minute they're moving, I'm like, fuck. It's like trying
the
to,
same thing.
because obviously it changes all the
We
time.
literally did the same thing in the gym. I was
Yeah.
looking, I was like, fuck. I was like, what is going on here? I just want to like, I was looking at it and then I got lost in the session and I was like looking at that, thought, fucking hell, should be training this guy. So you need to be careful with that shit.
Well, yeah, definitely. But I suppose it's like all the stuff that you're learning, it's your time to apply that and put that into practice as well. So it is good to look at that, but yeah, don't let it take over, obviously. But yeah, when someone's moving, it's just like you could do it like stop there for a minute. I'm going to think about what kind of joint force this is. But yeah, I mean, like it's definitely going to be useful. It's something you could then take in, like, okay, we've got an injury. This is bothering them. You can go away and think about that. Then you can then drag up pictures, or like the way Michael presented it with the skeleton doing the exercise was a really cool way of looking at that as well. Something I might do. I've got a wee skeleton in at the PT studio, so
I think the way
yeah, something I could.
We're lucky to have Michael teach us that stuff, because if someone else taught us, it would be so fucking confusing. And Michael's literally the best person to learn off in terms of exercise mechanics, biomechanics. Is well, best in the UK, and he's just you can't. There's no one better than him at teaching.
Yeah,
that
definitely.
stuff.
I think we said it. Well, you said it to me the other day. It's like we've both been reading a bit through joint structure and function. And it's like that textbook, had we not done any learning previous to that, would make absolutely no
nothing.
sense.
But then we can start like picking it apart, thinking, oh, this isn't quite right. It's like just because something's in a book doesn't mean it's right. And then from these courses and all the stuff we learned, it's taught us how to actually think. So reading through things like chain mechanics and open and closed chains, and it was like when I was reading joint structure and function, like the second edition, it's a really good book. But there's a few things that are a bit off. It's probably one of the best books that I've got to learn this stuff from. But the open and closed chain stuff is a bit off. So it just says even learning shit at uni, half the lecturers don't have an idea about physics and anatomy. When I went to uni, they had no clue. So when I was saying things like, I was still learning. So this is when I first got into like the RTS stuff. I was saying things like strength profile, resistance profile. I was like, oh, I don't like that term. I was like, what? And I was like, you don't know. I sort of explained what it was, or what I got told what it was at the time, and they just still didn't understand the whole thing, and the clueless. And I had that conversation with Michael. I was like, oh, when I was at uni, they just didn't get this shit. And I was like, oh yeah, because he's done a master's, so they ignored him and let him do his work, didn't they? So he just cracked on because he was going to, because that's what he did. He did a master's in biomechanics, didn't he? So it's so in terms of like university and the research and stuff, it's all, they don't understand anatomy and physics and how it's all applied.
Yeah, definitely. It's good to have that healthy kind of questioning of everything as well, in the sense of like, I've read this, that doesn't make it a fact. Can I think about this now? And does that actually make sense? And then does it apply to what I'm trying to apply it to?
I think this is where it can like lead us onto teams, where if you read something by someone who you like, think, right, it's got to be true. And if someone says otherwise, then that's it. I'm not listening to them. That's joining their team. You're on their team. But it's all like camps, thinking, right, this. I said it in one of the posts today. This bodybuilder said that. This bodybuilder said this. It was like, don't do that. Don't do this. It's just so fucking childish. Just make a decision for yourself. Collect all the information, not just from one source. Have a review it all. See what people say. Literally reference, read, go on the internet, do courses, and then just make your own decision
I was
and then apply it.
I was talking to someone about this the other day as well, because he asked me about something he'd seen on social media, this guy in the gym, and I said, anyone that talks in absolutes, you kind of need to watch out for absolutes, because there is no absolutes. But at the same time, I do appreciate on social media how it's hard to make a post without talking in absolutes to some degree, because I've put stuff up in the past that's like maybe this, potentially that, and like people are not
Yeah.
interested. So you
You
kind of
need
almost
to get
have to
that
have
fast
some
attention
sort of
quick. So what you
statement.
need to do, throw an
Yeah,
absolute statement straight out there, but then back it up with the stuff that you're going to put in the post. So you've got
yeah,
people's attention, and then that's what I've done with some of my posts, and you've done it yourself with the V-bar posts. And it's funny, the actual like comedic things about like posting about
yeah.
the V handle, people getting triggered about it, saying, "Oh, fucking love that
Fucking
handle."
V handle.
But again, that's a bit childish. It's just a piece of metal at the end
I
of the
got
day.
I got some abuse about sumo deadlifts the other day as well.
Oh God, we need to block those people.
They're banned from my gym
If
when I get one.
the thing is, sumo deadlifts, are they good for growing muscle? Potentially not the best. There's other things that could be better.
There's
But
better
for
options.
doing like powerlifting or competing in an event that has a sumo deadlift, then yeah, definitely you need to do that, or you enjoy doing them. So that's another reason. But if you want to grow muscle, if you're not
Yeah.
attached to any exercises, there's probably other things that are better to do. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but there's different options that we can explore to get better results.
But everyone's talking from their point of view. So I'm saying I'm not a fan of sumo deadlifts. I'm not a power lifter. If I was a power lifter, it might be
Exactly.
very different. But I'm thinking from the view of like I use a deadlift to grow my arse, grow my hamstrings, grow my erectors, things like that. I use a deadlift for that, right? I would not use a sumo deadlift in place of that, not at all. I genuinely don't enjoy doing the exercise either. I think we talked about this before. Sumo deadlift is mostly a quad exercise, which most
It
people
is.
will be
So
like, "What the
we
fuck?"
broke that down with Michael, and then again, fucking you cunt lecturers. this is at you again. So I hope they won't be listening to this, but I fucking wish they would. When first year, it was like, right, what does a sumo deadlift bias? And I'm like, oh, it's quads. And it was like, no, it's adductors. It's like, yeah, they're getting into a greater length, but they're not actually being biased. So when we broke it down with Michael, is when your feet are pushing out, that ground's pushing back in at you. And as well, you've got a weight on the bar that you've got to lift up. So the floor, literally, the floor's you're pushing away at the floor, and then you're pushing outwards away at the floor. The friction's going back, and then that puts a big resultant to your knee, which means your quads are going to be working more. And that's why sumo biases the quads probably more than anything else. Depending on the person, but most cases it's biasing the quads. And then at uni they got it wrong just because sensation and all that sort of shit. Idiots.
The word to highlight there is bias as well, not works.
Yeah.
Bias. We've got to keep that in mind. It's like there's no exercise that just works one muscle, regardless
if
of
we're
what
being
people
correct,
say.
yeah, biasing, not isolating, biasing.
Yeah. I fucking love an isolation exercise.
Oh yeah, not that you got to hold yourself into it. Make sure your body stays still, and then it's just the one joint moving. But you got to use all your abs and other shit muscles just to keep you in place.
During a bicep curl, I actually just kind of lie in a pile on the floor, just like almost like liquid, and just let my bicep do the work. It's an isolation exercise. Forearm doesn't work either. Yeah, just a pile of mush. Yeah. But I did have something interesting to say there, and I actually totally lost my train of thought there.
We'll wrap it up soon.
How did we even get into that? Yeah. But the V handle thing as well. Like, come on. I mean, if you've got a V handle, or if you've got a shoulder width bar, the shoulder width bar is going to give you that little bit more shoulder extension, that little bit more or shorter lat. I just can't see any possible reason to use the narrower one. It's not exactly a fun
thing. It depends on the person, how big they are. I mean, if is it a slender, small woman, and then she's got literally the shoulder width of the V bar, and it's pretty cool for her. But for literally 95% of the population, it's not a good option because it pulls you into a lot of internal rotators, meaning that we're trying to work a lot of external rotation. It's challenging that when we're rowing. So
yeah,
there you have it.
And that's not what most people are doing a row to aim to do. And again, if they were trying to work those muscles, there's better ways of doing it. So, like, it's one of those things. If you enjoy using it, you've had decent enough results with it, then perfect. But like to me, like in my head, once I see it and I see that as like a better option, I'm like, well, I'm trying to maximize my physique, so I'm going to use the better option. That's always going to be my train of thought. But at the end of the day, like, how much difference do you think that makes? And I'm going on air saying this now as well after all my hatred
What
for it.
is in like the actual using the V bar towards anything else?
Yeah, to like build a physique, like if you're going V bar versus like slightly wider grip handle, how much difference do you think it's
I'm
going
just
to
going to
make?
give you a really, really fucking annoying answer. For who?
It
Exactly,
depends.
that's who it is. I mean, like I said, if it's a slender fucking woman using that compared to a wider handle, all day use the V bar. But it just depends. These are the answers. What's the scenario? Who's the person? What's the goal?
I don't think there's anyone out there that's 6 inches wide.
Maybe midgets. Oh no, I was calling midgets. Sorry, what are they called? Short people.
I don't even think my daughter Grace, who's 2 years old, I don't think she's even that narrow at the shoulders. You know that?
Yeah, to be fair, yeah.
Yeah, no one's going to be that narrow. But like again, if you're a physique athlete, if you're doing bodybuilding, your goal is to maximize your physique and make the most out of it. And if you're not being as efficient as you possibly can in the gym, then in my opinion, you're wasting time. But if you're someone that's just in the gym to enjoy themselves for a bit of fitness, then yeah, use whatever you want. Enjoy yourself.
There we go.
Go crazy.
And let's wrap it up with that. So hopefully I haven't offended anyone, or Conor hasn't either, by saying V handle or midgets. So
I've said nothing. Let me just get that in. Get the last one in there. Cream of rice, the most overrated fucking thing in the industry.
I like
Overhyped
it.
shite.
It digests well and tastes nice.
So does fucking cereal, and at least it's fortified with vitamins.
Fair,
It's probably got better
minerals in
fucking
it,
nutrition.
and calcium and whatever the fuck's in
But
it.
you know with cream of rice though. You know with cream of rice, you can go to Asda or Tesco and buy
it's the
rice flour, which is the same thing,
horrible. It's
for
like
like £2 a kilo. Just add your protein
It's
powder,
not,
it'll be
I've done
fine.
it before.
Anyway, we'll wrap our debate up at that. We were just talking before this about a new Facebook group we're going to set up, which is kind of aimed at anyone that just wants to learn a bit more about training, nutrition. So it's going to be a free Facebook group that we're going to set up. We've not quite got it up and running yet. We're going to get a bit of content ready for it, but basically, if you're interested in learning more about anything training, anything nutrition, and basically a place you can come in, ask us questions, or just have a discussion about stuff. Like, it doesn't need to be. It's not so much that we're going to lead this group. It's our explorations as well. We're going to share what we're studying and what we're looking at right now as well. So if anyone is interested in that kind of thing and would be interested in joining, just send either me or James a message on Instagram. We'll add you to the list, and as soon as it's up and running, we'll get you in there. And then obviously we are going to plug some of our stuff as well. Head over to either mine or James's Instagram. We both have spaces left for our photo shoot program that's starting in 10 days' time. Look like you left. And if you want some free stuff, we've got a free guide to getting ripped this year. So go over and download that. That's all the plugs for today, guys. But yeah, if anyone's got any questions based on anything as well, feel free to give us a shout.